Let's be honest, cannabis policy in America is a complete mess. Seriously. On one hand, you've got states legalizing it and building these massive billion-dollar industries. But on the other, the federal government still classifies it right alongside heroin. It's a huge contradiction, and it's creating this massive policy collision course. So today, we're going to break down what it all means.
And that brings us to the fundamental puzzle, right? What happens when federal policy is basically frozen in time, but states and, public opinion are just racing full speed ahead? It's that tension right there that's creating all the chaos, all the opportunity, and the biggest questions about the future of cannabis.
And this is where the federal government stance gets, well, just plain weird. At the very same time the administration is actually softening its guidance on alcohol, we're talking removing mentions of cancer risks, it's holding firm on marijuana as a top-tier criminal substance. It's a huge disconnect from reality, especially when you realize more Americans are now choosing cannabis over alcohol. It just doesn't add up. So, this contradiction? It brings us right to the biggest piece of federal news out there, the big push to reschedule cannabis. The administration is signaling a major shift, but it is absolutely crucial to understand this is not the simple legalization story that a lot of people think it is.
Okay, so let's break this down because the details really matter here. Right now, cannabis is a Schedule I drug. That puts it in the same box as heroin and LSD, drugs the government says have a high potential for abuse and absolutely no accepted medical use. The proposal is to move it to Schedule III. That's where you find things like Tylenol with codeine. It's a huge shift because it's the government finally admitting, okay, this has medical use and a lower potential for dependence.
So what does this change actually do in the real world? Well, for scientists and businesses, it's a game changer. It unlocks the door for way more medical research. And this is a big one. It finally allows legal cannabis companies to take normal federal tax deductions, something they've been blocked from doing for years. But, and you have to hear this part, let's be crystal clear. This is not, I repeat, not federal legalization. It does absolutely nothing to change recreational cannabis laws or any of the laws already on the books at the state level.
Now, even with that limited scope, the political momentum behind this is for real. As Republican Congressman Dave Joyce says, the directive from the very top is clear. He sees this as a long overdue chance to finally study the real impacts of cannabis, good or bad. And he doesn't think the Justice Department is going to stand in the way. The wheels are definitely in motion, even if they're turning kind of slow. So, while the federal government takes these slow, tiny steps, the real action is happening at the state level. The states, they're not waiting around for permission from D.C. No way. They are acting like these little laboratories of democracy, and each one is forging its own unique path forward.
Just look at Florida. I mean, they are not messing around. A new bill down there is aiming for a complete overhaul. We're talking legal possession for adults, wiping out past convictions, and, this is huge, a plan to break up the existing monopolies. They want to tear down this seed-to-sale system, where just a few giant companies control everything, to finally open the door for small businesses to compete.
And the argument behind this push is really powerful. Senator Carlos Guillermo Smith puts it pretty bluntly. He basically says you can't go around calling yourself the free state of Florida while you're still punishing grown adults for using cannabis. It's a powerful call to get the law in line with what people actually want and with the state's own identity.
But, and this is a big but, progress is incredibly uneven across the country. I mean, look at Kentucky. Governor Andy Beshear straight up admits he's not satisfied with how slow their medical program is rolling out. They've been so focused on creating a highly regulated, safe system that patients are still just waiting. It's a perfect example of the different speeds we're seeing. You've got one state flooring it towards a wide-open market, while another is just cautiously building its system brick by brick.
So you have to ask, what's driving all this political energy? In a word, money. And we're not talking about some fringe market anymore. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And there's no better example of the economic powerhouse it can become than Massachusetts.
I mean, just get a load of this number. Since launching their legal market back in 2018, Massachusetts has sold over $10.8 billion worth of cannabis. That is not a typo. It's a massive economic engine that they built from scratch in just a handful of years.
And the crazy part is, the market is still growing up. In just the last year, sales hit $1.8 billion, and they're not stopping there. The state is already planning its next big move, social consumption lounges. Think of them like cannabis cafes, which are set to launch pretty soon. This is what a mature, regulated market looks like.
Okay, so while the regulated marijuana market is absolutely booming, the story for its cousin, hemp, is pure chaos.
A federal loophole created this weird legal gray area for hemp products, and the result has been a regulatory Wild West.
You want to know how wild? In Texas, state officials have proposed jacking up the annual retail license fee for a hemp business from $150 to $20,000. That is a 13,000% increase. It's not a regulation, it's basically an extinction-level event aimed right at small businesses.
And this quote from Heather Fawzi over the Texas Cannabis Policy Center, it just says it all. This isn't about safety or making sure products are good. It's a move that's going to force small, local shops to just close their doors, probably making way for huge, out-of-state companies that can actually afford to pay that kind of fee. It completely changes who gets to even be in the market.
Now, compare that scorched earth approach in Texas with what's happening in Wisconsin. They're actually trying to bring some order to all this chaos. There's a bipartisan bill there that's trying to do what a lot of people in the industry have been begging for: create clear, sensible rules. They want a minimum purchase age of 21, they want mandatory lab testing and honest labels, and they want to set limits on potency. The goal here isn't to kill the industry, it's to protect it, and protect its $700 million impact and its 3,500 jobs.
And Republican Senator Patrick Testin just sums up the logic here perfectly. He says these regulations are needed to get rid of all the uncertainty, to give businesses some stability, and to put some basic public safety rules in place. You know, it's about creating a safe, predictable, and sustainable market, not just wiping it off the map.
All right, so we've looked at the slow federal shift, the bold experiments in the states, the booming economics, and the totally chaotic hemp market. So what does this all add up to? What's the future of cannabis in America actually look like?
Well, it really all boils down to these core tensions, these massive colliding forces. You've got federal indecision smashing up against decisive state action. You have an economic boom in the legal market right next to a regulatory crisis that's threatening to kill the hemp industry. And underneath it all is this giant chasm between public opinion, which has clearly moved on, and federal law, which is just stuck in a bygone era.
Which leaves us with the final, critical question. With states building these billion-dollar industries from the ground up, and with public support at an all-time high, is federal prohibition even relevant anymore? Is it just an obsolete, outdated policy that's waiting to be tossed into the history books? That is the multi-billion-dollar question that America is struggling to answer right now.